My name is Harry, and for the last 8 months, I have worked as the night shift security guard at the Royal Crest Banquet Hall, a place that looked glamorous in the day and unsettlingly empty at night. Most guards hated the lonely overnight shift, but I preferred it. Nobody bothered me. No guests. No staff. No noise, at least. That's what I thought. The banquet hall after midnight feels like a different world. The chandeliers are off, the large velvet curtains hang motionless, and the sound of my own footsteps echo in the hallways like someone else is walking beside me. But the strangest part, the part one still can't understand, is the party hall itself. Room A11. A huge ballroom with mirrored walls and a polished marble floor. During the day it hosts weddings, birthday celebrations, corporate events, all kinds of noise and light. But at night, it becomes unpredictable. Even on my very first shift, I felt something off. The security room is just beside the hall. It's small, barely enough space for a desk, for screens, and a coffee machine that hasn't worked since 2019. From that room, I can see every part of the building through the CCTV system. Every room shows up perfectly, every hallway, every door, except the ballroom. The cameras work fine. They never show errors. No static, no blackouts. But the ballroom is always empty. Always, and no matter what sounds I heard coming from inside. My supervisor told me, ignore it. This building is old. Pipes make noises. Wood expands. Don't overthink. I wanted to believe him, but some nights, around 2 or 3 a.m., I would hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps, lots of them coming from inside the ballroom. Not heavy strides, not running, just the soft, rhythmic clatter of shoes on the marble floor, like a crowd moving in slow waves. Once, I even heard laughter, but every time I checked the live camera feed, empty. Perfectly, impossibly empty. This became routine. Night after night. I got used to it until one night, something changed. It started the moment my shift began. I walked into the security room, set down my bag, and looked at the camera screens. 3 of them looked normal, but the feed for room A11 did something I'd never seen before. It flickered. Not a complete glitch, more like something was trying to appear, but couldn't fully form. For half a second, I thought I saw movement, maybe the shape of a person, but when it stabilized, the hall was empty again. Exactly 1:12 a.m. I heard music, soft at first, distant, like an old ballroom melody drifting through the vents. But slowly, it grew louder, clearer, unmistakably real. I froze. It wasn't coming from the speakers, they stay off at night. It wasn't coming from outside the hall, is completely soundproof. It was coming from inside room A11. My heart hammered as I stared at the camera feed. Empty, still, silent. But with my own ears, I heard a crowd, footsteps, muffled conversations, clinking glasses, even the soft rustle of dresses brushing against the floor. I swallowed hard and leaned closer to the camera screen, hoping just once it would show me what I was hearing. And then it happened. For the first time, the camera showed people, dozens of them, men in formal suits and women in elegant gowns, moving gracefully across the ballroom floor as if attending the most glamorous event of their lives. The chandeliers glowed softly, illuminating their faces, but something was wrong. They had no reflections in the mirrored walls, and despite the movement, their silhouettes looked slightly faded, almost transparent. I blinked repeatedly, thinking it was my eyes. But the figures stayed. A full party, a celebration, a night that didn't exist. My breathing turned shallow. I quickly turned my head toward the closed glass door to room A11. No sound, no movement, no lights. The hall was dark and quiet in real life. But on the screen, a living, breathing party was happening. I didn't touch the door. I didn't dare point. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at my security room. A soft, polite tap. 3 times. I froze. Nobody should be here at this hour. Nobody. My hands trembled as I reached for the flashlight. Who's there? I called. No answer. I opened the door slowly. Nobody stood there, but on the floor was a food tray. A full meal. Hot. Fresh. Steaming as if someone had just prepared it seconds ago. A note sat on top. In elegant handwriting. For the guard. Come join us. My entire body went cold that I didn't eat the food, that I didn't touch the note, that I closed the door and locked it. But as I turned back toward the screens, all the guests in room A11 had stopped moving. Every single one of them was staring directly at the camera, directly at me. And they were smiling that I didn't sleep the next day. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying the night before, those footsteps, the echo of something moving inside the hall, and the way the cameras showed absolutely nothing. It wasn't my first strange night, but something about that silence felt heavier, like the whole building was holding its breath. By the time my shift started again, the sun had already disappeared behind the tall windows of the banquet hall. Lights flickered on automatically, bright and white, but they somehow made the room look emptier. I walked into the security office, my usual little glass box overlooking the hall, and dropped into my chair. The screens blinked to life one by one. 10 cameras, 10 angles, all empty, just the way the hall was supposed to be at night. But for the first time, I wasn't relaxed. My stomach felt tight. I checked the audio feed, normal static. Checked door sensors, normal. But I wasn't normal. Something felt wrong tonight, like the hall already knew I was here. Around 11:14 p.m., I heard it. A soft tap on the far door of the hall, not loud, not urgent, just a casual knock, as if someone was asking to be let in. I frowned and leaned closer to the monitors. Nothing. Every angle showed an empty corridor, silent and clean. Not a shadow moved. But in the room itself, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. A chill crawled up my spine. Hello? I called out through the speaker system, my voice shaking slightly. If anyone is inside, please identify yourself. Silence. Then 3 taps, fast and sharp, on the opposite side of the hall, like someone was running along the wall, knocking as they moved. I stood up, unable to sit still. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the hall door. My breath echoed inside my helmet like silence. The closer I got, the colder it felt, like stepping into a freezer. I pushed open the door and looked inside. The hall was empty. Still. Too still. But the air felt occupied. As if someone had just been there and left in a hurry. I walked slowly down the middle of the hall. The decorative chandeliers swayed slightly above me. Though there was no breeze. I stopped in the center and listened. Nothing. Until a faint shuffle, like fabric brushing against the floor. I spun toward the sound, raising my flashlight. The beam cut across empty tables and chairs, casting long shadows across the glossy tiles. N01, but the movement didn't stop. It circled me, soft, barely there. If I wasn't used to listening for small sounds on night shifts, I would have missed it. But I heard it clearly, something moving just out of sight. I reached for my radio. Before I could press the button, my phone vibrated inside my pocket. I froze. This phone was for emergency work calls only. No one else had the number. I slowly pulled it out. The screen was black at first, then blinked to life. Unknown number, 1 new message. My throat tightened as I tapped it open. You finally stepped inside. My fingers went numb. I spun around, heart pounding. Who's there? I shouted into the hall. No answer. The message wasn't a threat. It was worst. It sounded like someone who had been watching me for a long time. I rushed back to the security room, nearly tripping over my own feet, and slammed the door shut. I locked it twice. Breathing hard, I stared at my phone. Another message arrived instantly. Don't lock the door. You're not alone anyway. My entire body went cold. I dropped into my chair and checked the camera feed again. All 10 screens showed me sitting alone. Doors closed. Lights steadied. No movement. Nothing. But I wasn't imagining the feeling anymore, the pressure in the air, the way the tiny room felt too full. Then the third message came. Look behind you. My breath hitched. I didn't move. I couldn't move. The room behind me felt like open darkness. Slowly, so slowly, I turned my head toward the reflective glass wall that overlooked the hall. Nothing. Just my reflection. But as I looked closer, my reflection wasn't matching my movement. I leaned forward. My reflection stayed still, and then its head tilted sideways without my head moving at all. My vision blurred with fear. The lights in the office flickered once, twice, then went out, leaving me alone in the dark, with the thing that looked like me but wasn't me. And the phone lit up again. The next night, I came in early. I told myself it was because I wanted extra time to settle in, but honestly, I just didn't want to walk into another shift feeling unprepared. Whatever I had seen or not seen was still crawling around the back of my mind like an unanswered question. The party hall lights were dim again, the chandeliers glowing faintly like tired stars. Everything looked normal, but felt wrong. The kind of wrong you notice only when you're alone. I walked down the hallway toward the security room. My footsteps echoed behind me. Or at least I thought they were my footsteps. About halfway there, the echo didn't match. It was half a beat behind, like someone else was walking slowly, lazily following me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. I swallowed the unease building in my throat and took another step. The echo came again, late, slow, deliberate. I didn't turn around. Something inside me refused to. Instead, I pushed into the security room and shut the door behind me harder than I meant to. The metallic clang echoed around the small space, and I exhaled, feeling the kind of relief you only feel after running from something you're not sure was even real. I sat down at the monitor desk and scanned the cameras, same as before, clear, empty, silent. For a moment, I almost felt stupid for being scared, but then I noticed something strange. Camera for covering the eastern wing of the hall had a faint haze drifting across the bottom of the screen. Not smoke, not a glitch, just movement. Soft and shapeless, it was almost like fabric brushing past the lens, like someone wearing light-colored clothes walking just out of sight. I leaned closer. What the? Just then, the intercom crackled. A voice, light, distant, and strangely calm, whispered, "You're late tonight." I froze. That no one else had access to the intercom but me and the building manager. And the manager hated staying past 7 p.m. I pressed the talk button with a shaking hand. "Who's there?" No reply, just soft, steady static. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at camera 4 again. The haze was gone, completely, clean as if nothing had been there at all. I pushed my chair back and stood. I don't know why, maybe adrenaline, maybe stupidity, but I opened the door and stepped out into the hall. It was quiet, too quiet. I took one step, then another, and then I heard it again. Footsteps, behind me, slow, dragging, following. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway was empty, but the footsteps didn't stop. They continued circling me. Even though I saw absolutely nothing. I backed up toward the security room door, keeping my eyes on the empty hallway. The sound grew louder, closer, almost suffocating in the quiet corridor. My hand found the door handle behind me. I jerked it open and slipped inside. The moment I closed the door, the footsteps stopped, instantly, like someone outside had been waiting for me to shut myself back in. I locked the door out of pure instinct. When I sat down again, a notification suddenly popped up on the corner of the monitor screen. New message, hungry. My breath hitched. I didn't recognize the sender. There was no number, just the message, floating on the corner of the security screen like a glitchy pop-up. I clicked it nervously. The message expanded to fill the entire screen. "Come out. We saved your plate." And right beneath that line, a live camera feed appeared. Camera 1. The main hall. But this time there were people, hundreds of them, talking, laughing, moving, but only on the message screen. Not on the actual camera feed. On the real footage, the hall was still empty. The message flickered again, and a final line typed itself across the screen. "Why aren't you eating with us?" My mouth went dry, because if the camera wasn't showing them, then whatever those people were, they weren't alive, and they weren't supposed to be seen by me. Yet somehow they were watching me. I don't know how long I sat frozen in that security chair before my breathing steadied again. The building should have been silent, dead silent, but the sound I kept hearing in the hall wasn't something I could explain away anymore. It wasn't rats. It wasn't the metal expanding. It wasn't the air conditioner kicking on. It was footsteps, soft, deliberate, and moving in slow circles around the empty hall. Footsteps that refused to appear on any of the cameras. That night, I kept the volume on the monitors turned all the way up. The mics weren't great, but they were sensitive enough for basic security use. Still, every time a footstep echoed in the hallway, the speakers stayed silent. It was like the sound existed only for me, only in the real world, not through any machine. Around 2:14 a.m., I heard something different, not walking, not shuffling, not the clatter of dishes or laughter like before. A whispered, it wasn't clear, not even enough to guess whether it came from a man or woman, but it was close. Too close, like someone was standing just outside the security room door. A faint hiss of syllables pressed through the crack under the door. My hands instantly gripped the arms of my chair. I leaned forward. The whisper stopped, but then I heard another sound, something dragging softly across the floor, like fabric. A dress maybe, or a long coat. I switched all 6 monitor screens to cycle through every camera angle faster. 1 second per feed. I watched carefully. Empty hall, empty lobby, empty staircase, empty ballroom. Everything was empty, yet I still heard it, something brushing the floor, something breathing faintly. I grabbed my phone and opened the flashlight, but didn't turn it on. Just kept it ready like a tiny weapon that wouldn't help me if something really happened. For a moment, I thought about opening the door and checking the hallway myself, but I didn't, because right as I stood up, I saw something move on camera 3. A shadow. Just a small one, like someone walking past the edge of the camera frame. A silhouette. Not clear, not detailed. Just a blur that looked like a person. My heart jumped so hard, I felt the vibration in my throat. I switched to camera 3 again and stared at the long hallway. The image was steady now. Normal, but something felt wrong. The hall lights were dimmer, like the camera's brightness had dropped. The usually cream-colored walls looked gray. Even the floor seemed darker. I zoomed in. Nothing. Just as I was about to switch feeds again, movement flashed again, but this time at the far end of the hall, only visible for a second. A shoulder, or half of one, like someone peeking around the corner of the hall. I froze. When I zoomed in again, the corner was empty. But then the whisper returned, this time directly behind me inside the room. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't even turn around. My whole body went cold, like someone had opened a freezer door. But I knew the room was sealed. No windows. Only one single door in front of me. Slowly, I lowered my eyes toward the reflection on the monitor screen. It was faint, but enough for me to see behind me without turning. Nothing. Just my chair, the blank wall, the locked cabinet with the old files. But then through the reflection, I saw something that made my stomach twist into a knot. The security room door handle moved. Quietly, slowly, as if someone on the other side was testing it, checking whether I had locked it, but I hadn't. The handle turned a few millimeters more. My breath caught. Then click. The handle returned to its original position. N01 pushed. The door opened. N01 entered. The whisper stopped, and on the monitor, camera 3 brightened again like nothing had ever happened. I didn't sleep when my shift ended that morning. I drove straight home, locked my bedroom door, and sat on my bed trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. But deep down, I knew the truth. The footsteps weren't imagination. The whisper wasn't the wind. Someone or something was there with me last night, and it wanted me to know that I didn't touch the food. The tray had been placed gently on the small table near the monitor's, steam rising from the plate as if someone had carried it straight from a busy kitchen. But Elmwood Hall's kitchen had been closed for years. The cooks only came during weddings or official events. And tonight there was no event, at least not one I could prove. The moment I lifted the lid, a warm, savory smell drifted out, fresh biryani with a side of korma. Real food, not a hallucination, not a prank. Something or someone had made this. I stared at it, my stomach hollow but my mind tightened with fear. Hunger didn't win that battle. Not tonight. I pushed the tray away and looked at the cameras again. Still empty, still silent, still lying to me. But the hall outside my tiny room was alive with something else. Laughs, dancing steps, faint clinks of glasses, and a muffled echo of a woman's voice singing a melody I didn't recognize. It sounded like it drifted through time rather than space. I grabbed my walkie. Hello? Anyone on shift? Static. I wasn't expecting a response. Not anymore. Around 2:17 a.m., the music changed. Not gradually, just a sudden switch, like a radio being tuned by someone impatient. The melody became older, muffled, scratchy, like it came from a record player spinning in a dusty attic. Then came the applause, dozens of hands clapping. Then hundreds. It sounded like an entire crowd celebrating something. Someone. But the cameras? Dead still. I leaned closer to the main feed and replayed the last 5 minutes. For the first time, something flickered, a tiny distortion in the footage. A blur, like a person-shaped shadow leaning into the corner of the hall. I froze. Rewound again. Played it slower. There it was. A solid shape for less than a second. No face, no clothes, just a silhouette where nothing should be. My skin went cold. I tried switching to camera 3, the angle closest to the spot. The feed stuttered, then stabilized. Nothing. Just empty flooring and rows of chairs stacked against the far wall. Come on, I whispered. Something was very seriously wrong. I switched back to camera 1, rubbing my eyes. When the feed loaded, I actually jerked backward. The meal tray behind me, the one I had pushed away, it was empty. The plate was clean, wiped spotless. The spoon was resting neatly on the edge, like someone had eaten everything. A chill crawled up my spine, sharp and slow. I was alone in this room. No one had come in, not through the door, not through the vents. There was no alternate entrance. But the hall, the sounds, the laughter. I didn't look away from the food until the walkie crackled softly. Just one sentence, point one voice. A low whisper, like breath passing close to the microphone. You should have eaten with us. I dropped the walkie immediately. The party outside erupted into a cheer. The cameras stayed blank. And for the first time in my job, I wasn't sure I wanted to know what was happening. I just wanted the night to end. But it wasn't going to end. Not yet. And someone wanted me to join them. I rushed down the corridor, my boots thudding on the marble floor, echoing louder than they should have in an empty hotel. The closer I got to the party hall, the colder the air became. It wasn't the kind of cold you feel in winter. It was a stiff, unnatural cold, the kind that feels like it settles inside your bones. My walkie-talkie crackled again. Hall 1 movement detected multiple guests still inside. But I knew there wasn't supposed to be anyone left. The hotel had been closed for renovations. The staff had gone home. I was the only one on the night shift. I reached the door to the banquet hall and stopped. The wooden door, the one that always creaked when pushed, was already slightly open. A thin line of darkness stretched across the floor. I swallowed hard and slowly pushed it further. The hinges didn't make a sound. Inside, the hall was silent. Still, empty. But it didn't feel empty. The chandeliers weren't flickering now. They were glowing normally, warm and golden. The round tables were covered in white linen. Each one had plates, glasses, cutlery aligned perfectly. Everything looked untouched, exactly the way the setup team left it. Except one chair near the center of the hall was pulled back, as if someone had just stood up from it. And on the table in front of that chair, a plate of food, hot, fresh, steam rising. The aroma hit me. Biryani, chicken roast, the exact meal they served me earlier. The one I refused. My heartbeat hammered in my ears. I stepped closer. The steam curled into the air in slow, ghostly shapes. Someone must have just placed it there. Someone must be nearby, watching. But the hall was silent. Too silent that I glanced back at the row of cameras mounted high near the ceiling. I knew exactly what I'd see if I ran back to the security room. Nothing. Not a single table, not a single chair, not a single plate of food. Just a blank, dark hall. I turned around again. The food was still there. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. On the far side of the hall, in the dim light near the curtains, stood a figure. A man, completely still, facing away from me. He didn't move, didn't turn, didn't breathe, just stood with his hands by his side, staring at the long velvet curtains as if waiting for something behind them to move. My throat ran dry. Hello? I whispered. The man didn't react. A soft thud echoed from somewhere near the stage, like something dropping onto the carpet. I jerked toward the sound. The man didn't. I took one cautious step forward. The air thickened, the chandeliers dimmed, and the man, without turning around, without moving a single muscle, spoke. His voice was low, rough, like it hadn't been used in years. You shouldn't be here. I froze. Another step forward, and the lights above me flickered harshly. I work here. I said, my voice shaky. "Who are you? Are you lost?" The man tilted his head slightly. Just slightly. Not fully. "You saw them," he whispered. "You heard them." My stomach twisted, he continued, voice trembling like he was forcing the words out. "You weren't supposed to." The air grew colder, as if something was pulling the warmth out of the room. I took a step back. The man finally turned, slowly, too slowly. And when his face came into view, it wasn't distorted or monstrous. That made it worse. He looked normal. But he was pale, too pale, and his eyes were hollow, like he hadn't slept in decades. He stared at me with a calm expression that felt completely wrong. Then he raised his arm and pointed directly behind me. I turned and froze. Every chair in the hall was now pulled out. Every plate of food was steaming, and every seat was occupied by silhouettes. Faint, human-like outlines, sitting perfectly still, dozens of them, silent, watching me, and not a single one appeared on camera. I stumbled backward. When I turned again, the man was gone. Completely gone. As if he had never existed. And from all around the hall, in dozens of whispering voices layered over each other, came a single breathy sentence. "Join us." I don't know how long I sat frozen in the security chair after the last shift. Maybe minutes, maybe an hour. Time didn't behave normally anymore. Every night, something slipped a little more out of place. Sounds without sources, figures without faces, a party without a single visible guest. But Chapter 7 was the night I realized the guests weren't just invisible on camera. They might not be alive at all. Just after 1 a.m., the hall lights flickered to life on their own. That wasn't unusual anymore, but the density of the sound was. It was as if the hall was overflowing with people, hundreds of footsteps, overlapping conversations, chairs sliding, glasses clinking. I rushed to camera 12. Nothing. Camera 14. Still empty. Camera 9. Empty. And yet I felt vibrations in the wall behind me, like a bass speaker thumping from a live crowd. The party was happening again, unseen, but unmistakably there for the first time. The footsteps weren't only in the hall, they were behind me, soft, slow, dragging, like someone walking with one shoe missing. I spun around so quickly the chair hit the side table. The room was empty, as always, just the hum of equipment and the blinking red recording light. But then I smelled something faint in the air, perfumed, a floral scent, old-fashioned. Something I hadn't smelled since my grandmother's era. I whispered, "Hello? Anyone there?" No answer, but the footsteps stopped right beside me. 18 a.m. Someone knocked on the security room door. A single knock. I froze. The same thing had happened the previous nights. Invisible guests bringing me food I never touched. I'd always assumed it was a staff prank, or maybe some leftover hospitality from the event management team. But tonight, I'd already checked. There was no event scheduled, no staff on duty, no catering team. The building was officially closed. My hand shook as I opened the door. A tray sat on the ground. Same silver dome. Same heavy plate. Same steam rising from inside, as if someone had just placed it there seconds before. But what scared me wasn't the tray. It was the footprints on the floor. Wet outlines. Bare feet. But the watermarks, they weren't clear. They were smudged, like the feet that made them didn't have well-defined toes, like they were missing shape, missing form. Almost rotting. I backed away slowly and shut the door. I returned to the monitor wall, and for the first time since this nightmare began, something appeared. Not a person, not a figure, just distortion. Camera 14 glitched violently. Green static, black streaks, and a strange shimmering outline in the center of the hall. Not a human shape. Something taller, something that bent forward, unnaturally, as though it wasn't used to standing upright. The outline pulsed for several seconds, then vanished, but not before I captured one impossible detail. A shadow fell across the marble floor in the camera feed. The hall lights were off. There shouldn't have been any shadow. The moment the shadow disappeared, a soft voice drifted through the security room vent. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like, "Why didn't you eat?" I turned toward the vent slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. The voice came again, clearer. "We cooked for you." Something scraped inside the ventilation duct, moving closer, metal bending, Something trying to crawl through. I stumbled back from the desk. The worst part wasn't what I saw or heard, it was what I felt. Someone touched my shoulder. Cold. Light. Just the weight of fingertips. When I spun around, nobody was there. But the perfume smell was strong now, so strong it made my eyes water. The speakers crackled, and every camera, literally all 14, flashed white for half a second. When the feed stabilized, I saw something new. The hall doors were wide open, wide enough as if someone was inviting me inside. And on camera 7, written in dim condensation on the glass window of the hall entrance, were 3 freshly drawn words. I didn't want to return that night. Every part of me begged to stay home, to call in sick, to quit, to run. But fear has a strange way of pulling you back to the very thing you want to escape, just to prove you're not losing your mind. When I arrived, the party hall felt heavier than usual, like the air itself had gained weight. Even the corridor lights flickered, dimmer than before. I swiped my card, stepped inside the security room, and the door clicked shut behind me with a finality that made my skin crawl. The monitors came alive automatically. All 12 cameras showed the same thing. An empty hall, silent, still, perfectly normal. Yet the moment I sat down, a vibration ran through the floor like something was moving under the wood. I froze. I pressed my ear to the floor, hesitating, but curiosity overpowering fear. And then, faintly, I heard it. Footsteps, dozens, running, laughing, spinning in circles. But the hall above showed nothing. I sat up so fast I almost fell backward. "No," I whispered. "Not tonight." The footsteps grew louder, then stopped all at once. The silence after was worse than the noise. It was too clean, too sudden, like the sound had been cut with scissors. Then the room temperature dropped and my breath fogged. The monitors flickered. For a split second, so fast I couldn't even blink, I saw the hall full of people. Dancing, laughing, dressed in old-fashioned clothes from a different era, and all of them moved in perfect rhythm, like they were following music I couldn't hear. Then the screens cleared. Empty again. My heart hit my ribs hard. No, 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 not again. I pushed my chair back, trying to steady my breathing. My hands shook, sweat cold as ice ran down my neck. Then thump. The party hall doors slammed shut. From the monitor, it looked like a gust of wind had done it. But the way the floor shivered, the way the air tightened, it felt intentional. I grabbed the walkie-talkie, even though no one else was there at this hour. "Anyone on shift tonight?" I said, voice trembling, static. Then a whisper slid through the speaker, so soft I couldn't catch the words, but the tone was playful, mischievous, like someone teasing me. I dropped the walkie immediately. The footsteps returned, this time above me, circling the hall in a perfect loop, like the start of some unseen dance routine. I stared at the cameras desperately. Still empty. Why couldn't the cameras see them? Why only me? The footsteps stopped again. Then slowly, deliberately, something dragged across the floorboards above. Long, slow, heavy. Not footsteps now. Something being pulled. I swallowed hard. Get a grip, get a grip. Then the party hall lights came on by themselves. Bright, warm, inviting. A soft melody drifted and faint at first, but unmistakably real this time. Something old, classical, elegant. A waltz. The kind played at grand events decades ago. The cameras still showed nothing, but the room above vibrated with movement. I could feel it through my shoes. I leaned closer to the screens. "Show me," I hissed. "Show me what's up there." No reply. Just empty visuals and a hall full of invisible dancers. And then a shadow appeared on my side of the screen. Not inside the hall footage. Behind me. I didn't dare turn around. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. The shadow stretched across the floor, long and thin, like someone was standing just a few feet behind my chair, watching me. I closed my eyes for half a second. And in that half second, the whisper returned. This time clear. This time right beside my ear. "Join us." My chest tightened. My breathing stuttered. When I jerked my head to the side, no one was there. Just the empty security room. But the shadow remained, as if whoever cast it still stood there, waiting for me to turn around again. I didn't. I couldn't. I stared at the screens instead. and suddenly all 12 cameras went dark, black, silent, dead. Except for one. Camera 7. It flickered back on, showing the hall illuminated, filled with silhouettes. Not clear enough to identify, but enough to see that they were facing the camera, facing me, still. Silent. Waiting. My entire body locked. My voice barely escaped my throat. What do you want? The silhouettes raised their heads slowly in unison, and the monitor glitched, the shapes pixelated, then sharpened, then pixelated again. Then one figure stepped closer to the lens. It lifted a hand, not waving, pointing, directly at the camera, directly at me. The screen buzzed with interference before a message scratched across it, handwritten, shaky, but unmistakably clear. We see you. And then, come to the hall. The message faded. Camera 7 clicked off. Total darkness returned. But the footsteps above had stopped. The silence was worse, because silence meant only one thing. They were waiting for me. For the first time, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to run from the hall or run toward it. That I didn't sleep after what I saw. I couldn't. Those silent party goers, the way they drifted around me, the way the meal tray moved on its own, and worst of all, the voice that whispered my name behind the locked security room. Door. By morning, I felt like my bones were buzzing from exhaustion, but I still reported for duty. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity is stronger than feared, or maybe I just didn't want to admit that something had finally broken inside me. When I arrived, the hall was dark and silent again, just as it always was in daylight. The chandeliers hung cold and dusty. The smell of old polish lingered. Nothing looked disturbed. You'd never believe a phantom crowd had packed the room. Only hours earlier I walked straight to the security room, only to realize the door was already open. I froze. I never leave it open. Inside, the monitors were on, flickering softly. But instead of the live feed, all 13 screens showed static white noise, shifting snow. Not one camera was showing the hall. Someone had changed the inputs. My heartbeat clanged against my ribs as I stepped in and reached for the controls. Then I heard movement. A faint scrape. Someone was sitting in the chair. A man. Not a ghostly blur. Not something mist-like or transparent. A fully solid figure. His back was turned to me. Shoulders sharp beneath an old-fashioned coat, like something people wore decades ago. His hair was neatly parted. His posture too straight, too stiff, like he hadn't moved in years. I whispered, "Sir, you're not supposed to be here." He didn't answer. He didn't shift. But I noticed something else. The static on all screens wasn't random. It had patterns, dark spots forming and dissolving, lines aligning like shapes, almost like faces flickering for milliseconds. I reached for the chair, intending to tap the stranger's shoulder. My fingers hovered just a few inches away, and the man spoke. Quiet, flat, like someone talking through a broken radio. "You've been watching us." Every hair on my body stood up. I stumbled back, knocking into the desk. The screens flickered harder, and for a split second, the static cleared enough that I saw my own face, staring into the camera. Not now, not live. Hours ago. A playback. The camera showed me sitting here earlier tonight, terrified, looking over my shoulder repeatedly. But here's what shattered my breath. The playback room in the video wasn't empty behind me. It was filled with people, packed, standing shoulder to shoulder, completely silent. Dozens of them. Their faces were pale, stretched in unnatural angles, like they'd been wearing expressions for too long and forgot how to change them. Their eyes didn't blink. They were all staring directly at me. I remembered how terrified I'd felt that night, how I kept sensing things behind me, how I heard whispers but found nothing when I looked. They had been there. A whole crowd behind me, invisible in real time, visible only in playback. I grabbed the mouse to switch the camera feed, but the screens froze mid-frame. Every monitor now showed the same image, that silent crowd. But this time they raised their hands. All of them, as if waving at me. I backed away slowly. The man in the chair still hadn't turned around, but I could now see his right hand, thin, bony, resting on the armrest, and it was tapping, slow, rhythmic. 0.1 tap for every monitor flicker. "You should have eaten the meal," he said, still facing the screens. My throat tightened and I could barely speak. What would happen if I had? You would have joined us. The monitors went black, the tapping stopped, and the man finally shifted, turning his head slightly only for the lights to cut out. Everything plunged into darkness before I could see his face. I barely had time to process the voices whispering through the speakers before every monitor in the security room flickered violently, like they were glitching under some impossible load. The lights dimmed. The air became heavier, thicker, as if something enormous had stepped into the building. I froze. Then, all at once, the camera feed stabilized, and what I saw made my stomach twist. The hall was packed again. Not just 10 or 20 hundreds, all dressed in old-fashioned clothing, tuxedos, gowns, shawls, like the guests of some century-old banquet. They moved slowly, elegantly, as if gliding instead of walking. Some hovered, some shifted like silhouettes made of smoke. I leaned forward, and no matter how closely I looked, they all had blurred faces. Not hidden, missing, the eye sockets, the mouths, the features. Everything was smudged into nothingness. But the sound was sharp, too real. Laughter, clinking glasses, music from some antique orchestra. My heart hammered, because the hall around me, barely 30 meters away, was dead silent. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and stepped into the corridor. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I had to know. I had to see what my eyes could not believe. When I reached the hall door, the wooden frame was vibrating slightly, as if a heavy bass drum was pounding just behind it. But when I pushed the door open, empty. Not a soul, no music, no movement. Just the cold, echoing emptiness of the hall. But my cameras still showed a full party happening right where I stood. I stared upward at the nearest security camera mounted on the wall. IT was pointed exactly at me. And on the monitor in the security room, I was not there. The hall appeared empty in reality. But the camera showed the empty hall too, showed nothing standing where I clearly stood. I waved my hand in front of the camera. Nothing. I blinked, confused. I turned in a circle, checking the floor around me. Still nothing. As if I didn't exist on camera either. Suddenly the hall speakers crackled alive. A single voice came through. Clear. Sharp. Cold. Not male. Not female. Just wrong. Now you understand? It whispered. You were not watching us, we were watching you. Then the temperature dropped so fast my breath turned white. A shift in the air behind me. A soft sound like fabric dragging against the floor. I turned slowly. The hall was no longer empty. A figure stood at the far end. Unmoving, tall, thin. Face completely erased. IT didn't walk. IT didn't glide. IT just appeared closer, like reality skipped a frame. My blood went cold. I stumbled back toward the exit, keeping my eyes locked on it. But every time I blinked, it was closer. 10 meters, 0.5.2. I felt something brush my shoulder, cold, weightless, and I bolted out the door, slamming it behind me as the lights in the corridor snapped off, one by one, chasing me down the hall. I ran. I didn't think, didn't breathe, just ran back to the security room and slammed the door shut behind me. The cameras flickered again. The party was gone. The hall was empty, but the monitor focused on the hall door showed something standing right outside. Not moving, not knocking, just waiting. And then, slowly the doorknob began to turn. I didn't want to go back into the hall. Every instinct screamed at me to lock the door, stay in the security room, and pretend none of this was happening. But the voices, the movement, the strange whispering of people who weren't supposed to exist, it all dragged me forward like invisible hands on my shoulders. The hall was dim. Not dark dim, like someone had lowered the brightness of the world itself. And yet the air again vibrated with the feeling that a huge crowd was around me. I could sense motion, the shift of presence, the faint rustle of clothes that didn't belong to the living. My radio crackled, not with static, with breathing, slow, steady, as if someone right behind me was sharing the air from the same world in the same moment. I didn't turn. Turning felt like an invitation, a permission. Instead, I kept walking, passing through the center of the hall until I reached the long dining table, the one that had been bare minutes ago. Now plates were arranged, cups were filled, chairs pulled out. as if dozens of guests had risen only moments before I entered. Not a single person in sight, but I heard them everywhere, my heart hammered. Not in panic this time, but in a cold, helpless realization. The people I could hear were never visible, not on camera, not in light. Not in any world I understood that I whispered into the room, my voice shaky. Why are you here? The whispering around me shifted into a low murmur. It wasn't language I knew, not even something human. It felt like hearing a conversation underwater, muffled and distant. Then everything went silent completely, as if the world was holding its breath, that a single chair slid back on its own. Slowly, deliberately, and then one plate in the center of the table moved toward me. Not violently, not with aggression. Just a gentle, expectant nudge. The same food they always sent to the security room. The food I never ate. A voice right next to my ears, soft, almost patient, whispered, "Sit." Every part of me froze. That I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't dare look around. Then a second whisper, "Join." And suddenly it clicked. A horrible, heavy understanding. All this time the sounds, the crowds, the invisible movement. This wasn't a party. This was a feast. And every night, they offered me a plate, an invitation to take part in something I couldn't see. Something I wasn't supposed to see, that I had refused every time. But tonight, they wanted me to accept. I forced my legs backward step by step, refusing to sit, refusing to take the plate, refusing to even think of touching it. "No," I whispered. The entire room shifted like wind moving through bodies that weren't there. The whispers stopped. The presence withdrew, slowly, until the hall felt empty again. But before I escaped, before I reached the exit, before the quiet truly returned, a final whisper followed me, drifting from the center of the table. "You were the only one who didn't join us yet." I didn't look back. I ran, straight out of the hall, straight out of the building, straight into the cold night air, as if daylight could save me. I didn't quit the job the next morning. I didn't have to. Because when I returned, the management told me something that made my blood freeze. "The party hall is permanently closed. We've never hosted events at night. And we don't have any system that sends food to the security room. Whoever sent you meals, it wasn't from here." I never returned to that building after that day. But sometimes late at night, when I'm near an empty hall or I pass by a closed restaurant, I swear I hear chairs moving, plates being set, the quiet whisper from a world that's always watching, "Join us." And I walk a little faster, just in case they're still waiting for me to accept their invitation. For weeks after leaving the job, I tried to convince myself the whole experience was the result of exhaustion, stress, and too many lonely shifts. I told myself the voices weren't real. The crowds weren't real. The invitations weren't real. Eventually, life settled enough that the memories stopped feeling like a nightmare I was still inside of. Until last night, I was at home, lying in bed, scrolling through old saved footage from my phone just to clear space. Random screenshots, videos, notes, nothing special. Then I noticed a file I didn't recognize. A video dated the night I quit. Timestamped at 3:17 a.m. I never recorded anything that night. Hands shaking, I tapped it open. The screen went black for a moment and then lit up with a view I knew far too well. The party hall, but not empty, full, packed with the crowd I had only ever heard, never seen. They were all standing still now, no dancing, no drifting, just waiting. The camera was moving slowly, like someone was walking forward while recording. But what chilled me wasn't the hall. It was the perspective. The camera moved with my exact walking pattern. My exact shaky breathing. My exact angle of view. It wasn't filmed by a stranger. It was filmed by me. Except I never recorded it. The figure walking in the video came closer to the long table, stopped at the front chair, looked down at a plate with untouched food, exactly where I had stood that night. Then the camera turned slowly toward the empty space beside the table. A space that should have been empty. But the video showed someone standing there. A man, wearing my uniform. My name badge. My posture. My face. Me. Already there. Already part of them. The version of me in the recording lifted his head, staring straight into the camera, straight at me. as if he knew I'd watch this someday. Then he whispered in my exact voice, "You didn't join us that night, but we already took the part of you that stayed." The screen glitched. The crowd behind him all raised their hands, every single one pale silhouettes waving silently at the camera. The video cut off. I dropped the phone. My room went still, but in the reflection of the dark window in front of me, I saw someone standing behind me for a split second. Not close, not reaching, just watching, like someone waiting for me to return to a party I walked away from. And the last thing I heard, impossibly close, as if whispered into my ear, was, "You left early, but your place is still set." They reopened the hall a week later. According to the official report, the security room had malfunctioned. The cameras showed no unusual activity, and the events of that night were dismissed as electrical interference. They cleared my name, but they didn't clear the mystery. I left my job, but I kept one thing. The final recording from camera 06, it's only 5 seconds long. The frame is completely empty, as expected. No people, no furniture, no lighting except the emergency bulbs. But in the last second, the audio crackles soft, almost polite, and a voice whispers close to the microphone, "We're still here." Every time I replay it, I hear something else in the background. Not words, more like movement. Footsteps. Dozens of footsteps. But the timestamp on that audio, it's from 5 hours after I left the building. And last night, when I finally tried to delete the file, a new one appeared on its own. Same camera, same empty hall, same whisper, but this time, it said my name.